Hello, Mr. Brown here, your science teacher. Today, we're going to look at the science of protein synthesis. Now, we need to begin by reviewing our old friend DNA. DNA found in cells is the genetic material that contains the code or instructions on how to build you or any organism on Earth. When we look closer at DNA, we can see that it is encoded by 4 different nucleotides: adenine, cytosine, guanine, or thymine. A lot of times we like to abbreviate those to A's and T's, G's and C's. A's and T's always link together. G's and C's always link together. So I need help. What would the other side of this DNA strand look like? What do we got here? G, A, C, A, and T. Take a minute, pause the video, see if you can figure it out. All right, we're back. You got it. G's and C's go together. A's and T's go together. So the other side would read C, T, T, G, T, and A. You got it. All right, well, so what? We've got this big, long list of G's and C's, A's and T's, the code for DNA. What now? What does this all mean? How are we going to use this information? We need a code breaker. Enter RNA. You've heard of DNA before, but have you heard of RNA? Here we see the single-stranded RNA next to the double-stranded DNA. So what's the difference? Not much. Let's take a look closely. One of the things is DNA is deoxyribonucleic acid and RNA is ribonucleic acid. That deoxy part, that's just one little oxygen that's missing on that central sugar structure there in the center. That's it, not much. Also, RNA is single-stranded, whereas DNA is double-stranded. And instead of using the T, or thymine, RNA uses the U, uracil. Those are the only differences. Here it is in a Venn diagram. You can see they are both types of nucleic acids found in living things, but RNA uses uracil, whereas DNA uses thymine. And RNA is single-stranded and DNA is double-stranded, seen in this popular meme from Game of Thrones. Okay, so what do they do? All right, so here's one way to think about it. DNA is the librarian. DNA is the keeper of the information, whereas RNA is the customer that walks into the library to get information and then leaves. Okay, so DNA is the database of knowledge. RNA is the student that logs in to seek the knowledge. Does that make sense? DNA is the information encoded on these disks. RNA is the user that goes and uses the information. Does this make sense? So in a cell, the DNA keeps the information, the genetic code. RNA comes in to the nucleus of the cell and takes down the information, leaves the nucleus, goes out into the cell, and instructs the cell on what to do, making protein. Here's another analogy. All right, so here's a simple alphanumeric code. Pretend this is kind of like what DNA does. 26, 12, 8, 6, 14. Let's see, 26, that codes for the letter A. 12 codes for the letter M. All right, see if you can figure it out. Pause the video. And we're back. It codes to AMIGO, amigo. Next, the RNA has to translate this into something meaningful. Oh, that translates to the word friend. Amigo is friend in Spanish. Okay, so this is kind of an analogy of what's going on here. The DNA encodes the information. The RNA needs to come in and decode it. Okay, so here is RNA coming in to the nucleus. Where does this take place? In the nucleus of eukaryotic cells. And it says, DNA, can you open up so I can come through and make a copy of this information? The DNA is not going anywhere. The DNA stays there. The RNA then takes that information and leaves the nucleus and goes out into the cell. So the DNA is kind of like the database of knowledge, and the RNA carries that data. The little M you see here stands for messenger RNA. Okay, so here is a closer look at RNA, and every 3 letters that it is called a codon, a codon. Every 3 letters, every codon is going to translate into an amino acid. This is what I mean here. All right, so the DNA is found in the nucleus of eukaryotic cells. RNA comes in and says, what do you want me to do today, boss? And makes a copy, a transcription. It then leaves the cell, takes it out into the greater cytoplasm, and every 3 letters translates to an amino acid. We put these together, we're forming protein. We're doing is we are linking these together to form protein, all right? So what is proteins, right? Meat, chicken breast, fish fillets, pork chops, skin, muscles, protein. All right, every amino acid has the same basic pieces and parts. You start with a carbon, you throw a hydrogen on there, you throw a nitrogen group, you throw a carboxyl group here with oxygens and carbons, and you got yourself an amino acid. The only difference of all amino acids would be this little R group here. That's the only difference. This is the basic format of all amino acids. Some of these you may recognize, some of them you may not, but they're all the same basic format. They are the building blocks of protein. Right here you see 2 amino acids being linked together to form proteins. Here's a long chain of amino acids that were constructed in your cells, and they curl up and form proteins. Here you can see one of my favorites is this one, asparagine. That's found in asparagus, as the name implies. All right, so here's the story one more time. The DNA hangs out in the nucleus of your cells. It is the database of knowledge. The RNA comes in here and says, I'm the customer. What do you want us to do today? And it takes a transcription of this DNA code, brings it out into the cell, and every 3 letters is translated into a different amino acid. We link those amino acids together to form proteins. This is another look at it. You can see every 3 letters is coding for a different amino acid. We're going to link alanine next to this threonine, glutamate, leucine, and we're building proteins today. Here's the same thing shown again. We've just come out of the nucleus. Here's a messenger RNA delivering the day's instructions. We need to go ahead and follow these instructions and build proteins by linking amino acids together. Here's the same thing again in a different format. You can see the RNA was busy attending the library, that is DNA, coming out of the nucleus and saying, here are the instructions for today. What are we building today? Maybe we're building muscle. Maybe we're building bone or ligaments, tendons. I don't know. It might be different every day depending on what the cell needs. Here is a little closer look. There's that protein being produced one amino acid at a time. So every 3 letters that the RNA brings in codes for a different amino acid. This is a chart, right? So here's a question. What is this code for? GCA. Okay, well, start at the center, G. What's the next one? C. Okay, work out. And the next one is A. And so GCA codes for alanine. There it is, alanine. Okay, let's try another one. What is this code for? UGA. Start at the center, U, then we work out, G, and then A, and it says stop. Yeah, that's a stop codon. It means we've reached the end. We can cut it off and allow that protein to float out of the cell. So stop codons are important for ending the process. It's like a little scissors. Okay, we cut it, we're done, and we let that protein escape out of the cell. Proteins are made from amino acids. Your body uses amino acids to construct proteins. It is the DNA which tells you in which order to put those amino acids. It is the RNA which does all the legwork. It goes into the nucleus, receives the information, comes out of the nucleus, and tells the cell what to do. So, some examples of protein. Eggs, nuts, fish, beef, chicken. Protein, right? Here it is again. All right, so here we go. Okay, so the DNA exists inside the nucleus. The RNA comes in, makes a transcription, and leaves, comes out into the cell and says, this is what we need to do today. That every 3 letters is translated into a different amino acid. We link those together to form proteins. Proteins can then spiral onto themselves. They can twist and fold onto themselves, and many different proteins can glom together. Proteins are complex. They really are. They're really complex. They can get really, really complex. In fact, scientists sometimes need supercomputers and virtual reality to make sense of all of it. Here you can see a college student has made a protein using 3D printing. And here you see some college students are using augmented reality and virtual reality glasses to study proteins. It gets pretty complex. All right, thanks for joining me today on the science of protein synthesis. See you soon. Bye.